Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the transit Mercury in Aries. Now, when you have this transit of Mercury in Aries, what's interesting is, okay, it's making its transition from transit Mercury in Pisces. And during this time when Mercury was in Pisces, I think it was more of a time when people were more mentally relaxed. It was more of a dreamy type of energy, more fantasizing about things and not really taking action and making any of these dreams necessarily come to fruition, at least on average, I think. But then when you look at this Mercury in Aries, now when Mercury hits Aries, this is about taking those ideas, I think, or these dreams, I should say, and trying at least initiate something, some action connected with them, and maybe beginning to try to make these dreams come to fruition, at least start. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be finished, because Mercury, when it transits Aries, it's very impatient mental energy. It could be a period where you have a lot of people have a lot of these ideas just come up and really maybe sometimes nearly simultaneously, but because due to the impatience of this Mercury, it could people can often start a lot of these projects but not necessarily finish a lot of them. The thing that I recommend when Mercury transits Aries, is really to just, you could start your projects or do projects, I should say, that are not going to be that time consuming or tedious or painstaking. And really, it may be like projects that are going to be just not going to take that long period of time. Now, it could be when you have this Mercury in Aries, people can also be rather brusque and outspoken with what they say. And this is a time where people might be a little bit more pushy. It could be the time even when you have people that are generally more patient, say they're online, or whether they're in a grocery store, say, and they're waiting online for a little bit longer than they anticipated. They might become a little bit more angrier than average at this. And this is also a period too when Mercury transits Aries, the mentality, I think, can be really very impulsive and impetuous. Decisions may be made very quickly, but not necessarily with a lot of thinking prior to that. So it's really important to make sure you're not, like, for example, deleting significant email, hitting a button that will erase some kind of file or something that might be on your computer that's significant, just things of that nature. And really, it's just something to consider during this transit. And people might be a little bit more exasperated than on average if somebody doesn't quite agree with something that they're saying. And really, could be a period too where people are more apt to really speak out and speak their mind. Even the more passive people that really are not confrontational can be more so during this time. If there's something that's been suppressed and held back for a while, and you really, for whatever reason, you've been reluctant to state it and speak your mind, you may be very well more apt to do so now than you would be ordinarily. It's interesting. I know I'm talking about a transit, but I had a friend that had Mercury in Aries in his natal chart, but he's a sun in Pisces, and I think from the time he gave me likely Cancer ascendant. So his general nature is obviously, it could be very passive, very docile, and not really confrontational, but he has that Mercury in Aries that makes him really, can be very outspoken and blunt with what he says, and very, very cutting. I remember having a conversation with him one time, and I said something he didn't quite agree with, and he said, well, you're putting your at the time I was 37, he said, you're putting your 37 years of experience against my 50-something years of experience, or something to that effect. And I look back, it's a typical Mercury in Aries like energy. And really, it could be a time where people, okay, Aries, Mercury, and let's say Aries energy, well, Aries energy in general could be quick-tempered, but it's not vindictive or vengeful. It could be a time where people will be more outspoken and speak their mind, but they're not generally, the anger will not stay inside of them in their head for a prolonged period of time, generally speaking. And this too could be a time where you might, what I think is what's interesting about this, okay, people can come up, I think, during this transit with really more original ideas on average, more innovative ways of thinking, but it's really about putting those ideas into action and finishing them. And I think when you have the Mercury makes its transition to Taurus, that could be the time where you have a little bit more follow through on those ideas on average. So those are some things to look at with this transit. I think another thing what's interesting too is that Aries is connected with the military, and you have, well, what makes it interesting is that a lot of people, I don't know about other countries, but in the United States, when people are in their final year of high school, a lot of times, okay, Mercury and Aries will be hit a time at a relatively short period before they graduate. It might be 2 or 3 months or somewhere around there, and prior to graduation. And a lot of people that they graduate high school do wind up joining the armed forces. And I think that could be, maybe that has something to do with that Mercury and Aries, and that Aries energy at that time might be playing a role in it, and maybe that's why people might be thinking about that when it gets close to that time of graduation. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the transit Mercury and Aries, and stay tuned next time where I'll be talking about the transit Mercury and Taurus. 2 things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.